Hollywood is a word that everyone recognizes throughout the world. It doesn't matter what language you speak, what country you come from, everybody knows the word Hollywood. And so my mother and I, we wanted to share what Hollywood had to offer with the world. We decided to find a fabulous building that had a lot of Hollywood history in it, hence the Max Factor building, where Max Factor, Hollywood's makeup king, made all the celebrities glamorous in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. We showcase more than 10,000 exhibits featuring more than 100 years of history of Hollywood. Costumes, props, memorabilia, star cars, all sorts of wonderful items that everybody recognizes. Our exhibit of Back to the Future, the trilogy, it brings key elements of all three films together under one roof. Once Bob Gale got involved, it was as though the floodgates opened. Every collector wanted to participate.
This is the very first Back to the Future exhibit of any size. As you'll see, there's some pretty amazing stuff here.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
You may all know the story that Back to the Future was inspired by discovering my father's high school yearbook. Here is a picture of my late father, and he's holding his 1940 high school yearbook, showing that he was the president. This was my manual typewriter on which the first two drafts of Back to the Future was typed. This was purchased when I was a student at Tulane University in my freshman year, 35 bucks used, and I kept it with me all my life because we're all superstitious in the film business.
About all that talk about screwing up future events.
These are original notes from the writing of Back to the Future 2 and 3. We had an idea that Japan would be America's 51st state. We had an idea that Marty's son would be 6 feet tall. Turned out to be not technically feasible to do it, but it would have been a funny gag.
Where are we going? We don't need roads.
Reagan quoted Back to the Future in the State of the Union address in 1986. And I wrote the president a letter thanking him for quoting the movie, and he was kind enough to send me back a personal autograph which says, "To Bob Gale, where we're going, we don't need roads, only horses. Thanks for the inspiration, Ronald Reagan." One of my prized possessions, of course.
I need to borrow your hoverboard.
Here we have a screen-used hoverboard from my own collection. Has one of the coolest, simplest special effects. You look at this and you say, how is it hovering? And it's actually just sitting on some wire legs. As long as you had the camera a little bit above the hoverboard, you never see those legs. Cheap, simple, wonderful illusion. We had probably 30 or 40 of every type of hoverboard made out of all different types of material. Sometimes we would hang an actor from wires, and the wires would be either attached to the hoverboard itself or to the actor, and the hoverboard would be glued onto his feet. Sometimes we just need to be able to have the hoverboard be lightweight enough so that the actor could carry it and then just kind of toss it on the ground.
Hey, kid, thanks.
Keep it. I got a pit bull now.
We got tons of letters from kids asking us to send them a hoverboard. This one here, he writes at the end, "I am a child," like we couldn't tell from how he wrote it. There are 2 DeLoreans in this exhibit. This is a pretty exact replica of the DeLorean from Back to the Future Part 1. The other one that we have here is the DeLorean that was actually used in Back to the Future Part 3. It was a challenge to rebuild these cars to give them some pep and power because the DeLorean was a notoriously underpowered vehicle. So we went off to do the sequels. One of the first things we had to do was soup up the engines. We came up with this great visual of these oversized white wall tires. And this car was actually driven as fast as you see it going in the movie at the drive-in theater that we built in Monument Valley. When we shot that scene, it was 14 degrees, 14. And you have Doc wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Wardrobe guys were right off the frame line holding these big giant parkas so that the actors could warm up after each take.
You can't wear those futuristic things back in 1885. You shouldn't even be wearing them here in 1955.
In the first 2 drafts of the script, the time machine was actually a time chamber built out of an old refrigerator, which Doc Brown had to drag around on the back of a pickup truck. When we finally got the movie to pre-production, director Bob Zemeckis was starting to think about how he was going to film some of these scenes, and he came up with the brilliant idea. It would make a lot more sense for Doc Brown to have built the time machine into a car, meaning that our production company could more easily move it from here to there. One of the cool things about the DeLorean, of course, is the gull-wing door, which looks like the opening of a door of a flying saucer from all those alien invasion movies made in the 1950s.
Look!
And the look of that car is what gave us the idea of having the farm family think that it was a spaceship. So in order to make that joke really pay off, we created this Tales from Space comic book with original artwork by our production illustrator, Andrew Probert, and it's done in the exact style of famous EC comics of the day. The head of MCA Universal, CEO Sid Sheinberg, loved it so much that he thought that we should change the title of the movie, Back to the Future, which he hated, to Spaceman from Pluto. Thankfully, we didn't do that.
Marty!
Behind me here, we have one copy of Doc Brown's yellow robe that he wears at the end of the first movie and brings back in the second movie.
Check the drying.
This is the famous size-adjusting jacket. There were tons of wires run through the jacket towards the special effects guys to tighten the sleeves and make the garment fit Michael better.
This thing doesn't fit.
We wanted the future to be a nice place to live. We didn't want one of those movies where everybody in the future wears a uniform. We thought that was a terrible idea. So everybody in our movie has very individualistic looking clothing, bright colors, it pops, it looks like fun.
Doc?
One of the things that people love so much about Back to the Future and the sequels is the relationship between Marty and Doc. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd hit it off brilliantly. It was very unusual because Christopher is a theatrically trained actor. He knew every line of the script on the first day of shooting. Michael was trained on Family Ties, a sitcom, so Michael never learned his lines until about 10 or 15 minutes before we were going to shoot the scene. Michael would throw Christopher a loop by saying something that wasn't originally in the script. Chris was such a good actor that he just went with it and made something out of it. These guys became great friends. Still are great friends.
Hello? Hey. Hello, anybody home?
In Back to the Future Part 2, we got a lot of things right about the future, and we got a lot of things wrong, too. We thought fax machines were taking over the world, so we just went crazy with that idea. The money in here are replicas of the future bills that we created for the movie. We actually went to the currency company, Jeffrey's Banknote Company, and we asked him what did he think money was going to look like in the future. And he said pretty accurately that the heads of the presidents would be much bigger. They would have magnetic stripes to help avoid counterfeiting. We also have some really cool stuff from Back to the Future Part 3, things that people would rarely see. We have the Frisbee pie plate that Marty throws. And the story is there was a Frisbee pie company, and they put their name on those plates. That's why we call those things Frisbees.
Hey, Frisbee, far out.
Maybe it's an urban legend, but you can look it up and decide if I'm right or not. We also have Marty's gun belt and holster from Back to the Future Part 3.
I'd like for you to have this brand new Colt Peacemaker and gun belt.
This was the actual belt that he wore. Michael J. Fox and Tom Wilson did take gun lessons from a quick draw artist. Tom practiced that for weeks. Michael learned a little bit about it too, but of course, Michael didn't have to do any drawing because he drops the gun belt. Some of this stuff is so unusual and so rare that I had never seen it until I came to the exhibit myself, including a Space Zombies from Pluto lunchbox, the novelization of Back to the Future, lots of DeLorean replicas. The DeLorean toy was a big deal. Here we have another case, some of it well-known, the hat in Part 2, the Back to the Future Monopoly set where you play, instead of Atlantic City, Hill Valley. There are also replicas of the self-adjusting sneakers Nike created with us for Part 2. They made 7,000 pairs of these things to raise money for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. 35 years ago, when Back to the Future came out, if somebody came to me and said, this stuff in your movie is going to be in a museum, I would have said, hey, what are you drinking, and could I have some? Time makes everything respectable, as they say. Back to the Future certainly has been so respectable, we're in a museum. So if you come to Los Angeles, be sure to put the Hollywood Museum on your destination for tourism. This exhibit is going to be here, and you definitely want to check it out.